is going to be less, your tax level is less than it will be in retirement, then maybe a Roth IRA is the solution for you. However, if you think you're going to be making less in retirement, why in the world wouldn't you want to have it in a 401k plan? That way when you pull your money out, it's going to be taxed at a lower level than you're currently paying. That's why Roth IRAs work really well right now for people that are in their 20s and 30s, because they're just starting out in their career and they won't be tax-wise where they'll be at 50 and 60. So that it does make sense in a way for them to be able to do that. However, what happens in that situation is that they get used to investing in this Roth IRA and they keep going up the income ladder, and all of a sudden they hit that first threshold, for the Roth IRA, and now they no longer qualify. Now they're suddenly saying, oh God, I've just got this 401k plan that I have to put in, and it's all tax deferred, but I'm going to be taxed afterward. Even though we don't know what the future holds for taxation in retirement, most of us are going to be in a position that in retirement our taxes are going to be less than while we're working. So in that case, you're much better off.
Even if they increase?
We don't know. We don't know. We know they're going to increase taxes. We know that. But if you follow the letter of what they're saying, not on the majority of the population, it's just on the ultra wealthy that they're increasing taxes. Everybody else is either keeping their taxes the same or they're getting a tax reduction. So what you need to think about is when you're retired, are you going to be part of that group that they're saying you're kind of protected, or are you going to be part of that group that is considered ultra wealthy and you might be subject to who knows what? So I would like to think that you've structured portfolios in a very tax efficient manner so that as you're retiring, you're able to offset gains with losses as you're selling, keep your taxes down at a minimum level, and be able to live a very, very good lifestyle, versus saying, all right, we have no way to defer any longer, we're taking the maximum hit, and we're going to be taxed at the maximum tax bracket. That's really hard to do, because you can defer and you can actually determine what you're going to take out of your 401k or your IRAs, so that you can set it up where you have taxable accounts that you use. You spend your taxable money first, your CDs, your bank accounts and whatnot, and then as you go through that and get that to a level where you're comfortable just keeping that minimum in your account, that's where you start selling your retirement assets, because these are put aside tax deferred. These are compounding and building as long as you're not touching them. As long as you can defer them past the point when you're actively employed, now your income drops down to next to nothing in terms of earned income, and now it becomes income that's based on your investments. Then you really rely on your investment advisor to say, I need you to harvest losses for me. Find the things that I lost money on in the year, and when I take this distribution, I want you to offset that so my taxes are as minimal as possible. That's something we do every year for all of our individual clients that have IRA rollovers, so that it helps keep them in a lower bracket relative to what they're doing. And it's something like, like right now, there's so many losses in the market that it's kind of hard, because it's loss harvesting for, loss, unless you purchase property or a house or something like that you want to show, or sold, not purchased, sold a major asset. It's very difficult right now to harvest these losses, because you're just selling at a loss, unless you're wanting to donate something to the charity.
Would they change the age at which you have to take?
You mean required minimum distribution?
Yeah.
Actually, the gentleman you talked to for that is right back there.
There's nothing before Congress right now that will be any dramatic change in the retirement industry, whether it's 401ks or IRAs or anything. But it's a big unknown, because I talked to Jim Paul, who's a ERISA counsel down at Downey Brand, and he is also on the ASFA Government Affairs Committee. So they go out to Washington, they talk to the legislators and try and influence them to not do crazy things with respect to our retirement plans. And Brian and Derek and I are all members of ASFA, so we're all working towards that same goal, is to not have crazy things happen with the legislation. But we don't know what's going to happen next year, because they are going to need to raise money. Now, what's happened in the past, like when, trying to think, it was in the Clinton administration, where they needed to raise money, and they can look at the retirement plans, and like Brian says, they can do it by hitting the top tier. So what they do is they'll amend the plan to say, right now the most we can consider for a retirement plan for compensation is $245,000, okay? So that means if you have a president of a company and he's making $300,000 a year, and they have a 10% pension formula, he gets $24,500 because he gets 10% of the maximum complement, okay? Whereas, you know, you or I making $40,000 a year or $30,000 a year, we get 10% and our contribution is $3,000 or $4,000. If they amend that compensation limit down from $245,000 to $135,000, that doesn't affect 99.9% of the people in retirement plans, so nobody cares. So they'll do that. But that takes away big deductible tax contributions to retirement plans. Or they might do something like reduce the 401k limit, which next year is going to be $22,000 for a 50-year-old. Okay? Maybe they'll reduce that to $15,000 or $12,000. We just don't know what they'll do, but what we do know is they'll probably do something. But it probably won't affect most of us in retirement plans because it's going to be targeted at the top tier. So hopefully that
You know,
makes
you
you
just
feel a
read a
little bit
lot of
better.
articles about people who are gonna have to take their distributions this year at the time when the market is
Oh, you know,
changed.
there is legislation out there, well, it doesn't help us for 2008 because people who have taken their, and what she's talking about is the age 70 and a half required minimum distributions. At age 70 and a half, you have to start drawing money out of your retirement plans and your IRAs. There is legislation, emergency legislation that's going about that says in 2009 they're going to suspend it for a year because they don't want people to sell when their assets are so low, which is a good thing. It doesn't really help the people who have had to take distributions in the last quarter of 2008 because they are selling. But hopefully they can sell and buy back into their after-tax account the same day with the same shares and they'll be okay if they don't need the money. Now again, people who have to take required minimum distributions generally are 5% or more owners or highly compensated employees or retirees. If you're still working for the company and you're over 70 and a half and you're not an owner or highly compensated, generally you can defer taking your distribution until you retire. So again, most of these things that may occur, which we don't know what they are, it's all a big guess, are probably not going to affect most of us in this room. It's going to be targeted against the super highly compensated and, you know, the big contributions. Maybe defined benefit plans, and we don't have one of those. So I wouldn't worry too much, but I will keep you posted. As I see something coming down the pipe, I'll let Greg and Nelson know. But there's nothing right now that we need to immediately be concerned about.
Yes, Nelson.
Is it reflected here how Russell has done in comparison with the general stock market?
It is not, because what we're doing is we have a balance for the portfolios showing against the indices. But it's building in DFA, it's building in Russell, so it's not a pure Russell against that. But if you want, we can do a direct comparison, show you, here's the Russell fund, here's where it did relative to its respective benchmark. Sure.
That'd be great.
Okay, we can do that, so. Any other questions?
Given the massive debt, do you see hyperinflation? So what's the talk about?
You know, it's anybody's guess right now. They're actually, Bernanke has done a very, very good job of keeping inflation in check. And his dissertation, I guess, was on the Depression. I mean, he understands more about the Depression era than anybody else, and he's probably the best possible person we could have right now. He has been so cautious to keep hyperinflation in check that when we suddenly were at 5.4%, people were saying, oh no, here it goes. We're now at 3.7%. He's done just a tremendous job, and he, in his comments, I believe yesterday, he was talking about additional rate cuts as feasible. Now, there's a challenge. We're down at the 1% level for the Fed funds rate, so the odds are they might be able to cut another 0.5%, but if they go beyond that, it becomes a problem. If they get down to 0, there's a whole other set of problems that kick in when we do that. So we're looking at probably 0.25% to 0.5% that could happen within the next 2 to 3 months. But again, it takes so long to trickle down once that happens. Now, the good news about what's been happening is that actually it's finally kicked in for like homeowners, if they can free up credit for being able to get loans, I think that